Hello again. Welcome to the second episode of Pyramid Knitting, a podcast about knitting and natural dyeing and whatever else I feel like talking about. My name is Liz. I am coming to you from my home just outside of Taos, New Mexico. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram also as Pyramid Knitting. I had hoped to record a little bit sooner than I have. It's been a few weeks, maybe almost a month since I did the first one, but I've just been super busy. I've been working like literally every day. I don't have a day off ever, at least not for another 3 weeks or so. So yeah, I've had a lot going on. I just went on a trip up to Portland, Oregon, where I used to live. It was my first time back up there since I moved down here to New Mexico. So it was really nice being able to go and see all my old friends who I haven't seen in like almost 2 years, and hang out in the old neighborhoods and go to all the old haunts. And it was a really nice visit, really cathartic in a lot of ways. I got to get out to the ocean, went out to Astoria for the day, and went out towards Fort Stevens. I got to get my feet in the Pacific, and it was that perfect Pacific Northwestern beach day where it's totally overcast and gray and it's chilly and the wind is blowing, and it was perfect. I loved it. The big barges out, coming in to the Columbia River, and I thought I was going to have all of this extra time whenever I was on the trip to knit, but it ended up just being like a super busy trip, and I didn't have the spare time that I thought I was going to have to just kind of laze around and like go sit in a coffee shop and knit for a few hours in the afternoon, like while my friends were at work. Like somehow somebody always had the day off, so I never had really very much time on my own whenever I was on the trip. So yeah, I apologize too if I'm turning very awkwardly. I slept funky on my neck last night and I can't really turn to the left. It's kind of frustrating. So, I'm sorry if I'm a little robotic today, but so it goes. So yeah, last episode, all of the little garden starts were much smaller. Turn you over a little bit there. As you can see, they are getting much bigger. I've got this amaryllis that's just going insane. Like, I don't think it was even sprouted the last time that I recorded. I was gifted all of these amaryllis bulbs, so I have them all over my house now. But this is the biggest one so far. It's really popped. And you can see I have another one in the pot next to it that just never even sprouted, so whatever. And I've got all my little starts going. I just up-potted some of my tomatoes the other day. Got some herbs and some more tomatoes and lettuce and peppers, and got some catnip going over here for my cat. And some more fall stuff in here in the back, and a bunch of basil. So, turn you back a little bit. Hello. Yeah, so the funny thing is I live in an earthship now, which is basically, I live in a greenhouse. So the seasons don't really apply to me that much anymore. And I haven't expanded my garden outside yet. I'm doing only containers inside at this point. I will start gardening outside hopefully next summer, but there's a lot of work to do before I can get to that. But yeah, I mean, it's the end of August and I'm starting my tomatoes, which is really counterintuitive, but yeah, just the way my life has been going this year, I didn't have the time or the opportunity to start any plants until like July, really. So yeah, I'm pretty behind on things, but since I live in a greenhouse, it doesn't really matter. So that's a nice perk. Hopefully, I'll be harvesting my first tomatoes around Thanksgiving or something like that. So, travel, plants, I'll get into the knitting now. I'm going to start off with finished objects. I don't have any of my finished objects here to show you, because they've all gone on to their new homes. But the first one is the Gemini top, which I showed you last time. It's a pattern by Richmond that was from Knitty magazine in 2012. and I was knitting it in Juniper Moon Zooey DK in the colorway Mint. And I was doing this as a shop sample for Vortex Yarns here in Taos, New Mexico. I was not having a love affair with the yarn when I was knitting it last time. I never really did have a love affair with the yarn. Yeah, I showed you before, it's a cotton linen blend, but the way it's put together, it seems like there's 1 ply of cotton and 1 ply of linen. So it does a lot of sort of thick, thin transitions. And actually, by the time it all knitted up, you can see here the texture of the cotton and the linen, the thick and thin, like it actually pooled. The texture pooled. And I'm really not a fan of pooling. So that was kind of a bummer. I mean, it's a perfectly cute top. It's a perfectly nice yarn. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. I probably wouldn't use it again, at least not for a top like that. Maybe for something with more lace and less stockinette, it would be better, like more of a casual summer beachy thing. It'd probably be really good for like the Cancun top that's really popular right now. But that's not what I knit, so it's okay. Anyway, the sample is now up in the shop, and it looks real nice sitting there in the window at the shop. And you know, I don't really have anything else to report about it. It was a pretty straightforward knit. I made a stupid mistake whenever I was knitting it and forgot to change my needle size at a certain point and had to go back, rip back, and knit out again. But yeah, aside from that, straightforward knit, perfectly fine yarn. Not the best combination of yarn and pattern, in my opinion. Yeah. So that's the Gemini top. Second finished object was not even a work in progress last time. So this one was a really quick knit. It is Dinosaur Junior by Katie Boyette, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. And I have a friend who is really into dinosaurs. She's always been into dinosaurs, and she had a baby last year, and I had intended to knit this for her baby last year. But I had, like, all of my friends were having babies last year, and I had like a backlog of baby knits. And I may or may not leave this part in, but I had this backlog of baby knits, and the other thing that was going on in my life is I was getting separated from my husband and eventually divorced. That finalized earlier this year. I really might cut this part out. The divorce finalized 2 days before my mother passed away, so it's been a real shit year, pretty much. But point being, I had a lot of friends having babies and a lot of things that I was going to knit for them, and I had moved out of this house and I was living in a place with a couple of roommates, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a great time to get a lot of knitting done. You know, I'm going to knit things for all of these babies. I'm going to knit things for myself. I'm just going to like knit my way through this horrible time in my life. But I very quickly discovered that I didn't want to knit for anybody else. I only wanted to do selfish knitting. I just could not find the motivation to work on any of these baby projects. I was doing this really cute little baby sweater out of this yarn that I dyed myself out of avocado pits. It was this, you know, really nice mauvey pink that the avocado does. And, you know, it's tiny, but I could never muster it. It just like seemed like it took forever. And eventually I just came to accept that right now I can't knit for anybody else. I just need to knit for myself. And that's a self-care thing. And I'm just declaring, screw all the baby knits. I'm not trying to knit anything for, you know, the impending delivery dates. When I see the kid, then I'll knit something. So I gave myself permission and gave myself time. And I was finally going to see the baby because I went back up to Portland. And he's 9 months now, I think. So I started up this dinosaur, and it was a super quick knit. It's done in worsted. I just stashed dough for the yarn. I had some Knit Picks Brava, which is an acrylic in worsted weight that I did for the body. And then for the scales was a superwash wool that I cannot remember what the brand is. I didn't have the tag on it anymore, but I do know that it's a superwash wool. So it should be, you know, good for a toy. And the eyes I just embroidered on. I didn't want to bother with, you know, buttons or safety eyes or anything. I always get a little nervous about that with kids because, like, I don't know. So I just embroidered it on with some scrap black sock yarn that I had. And yeah, it was a super quick knit, super fun. I really enjoyed like seeing the shaping take place. Because, you know, unlike a garment or, you know, a sock, like something with a pretty standard construction that you've done a bunch of times, I've never knit a dinosaur before. So I was following along the instructions and it's like, okay, I'm just going to do what it says. And then all of a sudden, you know, this little body emerges. And I thought it was going to be like super fiddly and time consuming to do all of the scales and do the feet and sew everything on. And I was kind of dreading it, but it was super fast. It was super easy. It was like not a big deal at all. So yeah, it was a really fun little project. And it got done super fast. Yeah. So those are my finished objects. And we can move on to works in progress, which I have a gazillion of works in progress still. So, again, I can't move my neck independently of my body today. But hey, that's what happens whenever you're getting old, I guess. So, this was also a work in progress last time. My yarn just rolled away from me under the table over there. All About That Brioche, which is a pattern by somebody. I should know this. I typed it out last time. I don't remember now. I'll type it out again and it'll be down in the lower third. And it's a nice big swoopy triangular shawl. It's going to be two color brioche band in the middle. And my second color is this fun little speckled number from Uncommon Fibers. And yeah, I don't knit with speckle yarns. This is like my first speckle yarn, I think. But I wanted to get on the bandwagon, I guess. Do something with a speckle. And then the main color here is Madeline Tosh Light in Button Jar Blue, which is just a lovely, lovely bright turquoise. I love it so much. It's just like the happiest color. You can't be unhappy when you're knitting this. And it's, you know, again, pretty straightforward knit, garter stitch with increases and decreases on either side to get the shaping. I took this as my travel project up to Portland and really expected to be at the brioche section while I was there, but I didn't quite make it. I'm pretty close. I've got another, you know, I would guess inch or inch and a half to go before I get up to the stitch count where I start in the second color. So it shouldn't take too much longer, but it's not my highest priority knit to work on, which is why I wanted to take it as a travel project, because it's small and, you know, it travels well, but I just didn't get that far on it. So hopefully by the next time I record, there will be some brioche band that I can show off. And I've never done two color brioche before. I have only done brioche once. I did a brioche hat last winter by Andrea Mowry. It was the Vanilla Fog? Vanilla hat? Vanilla something, I think. I'll have to look up what it's called. But I really loved the hat. It was two fingering yarns held together. So I had one with a lot of variegation and one that was like a solid green. And it just made the nicest effect. I really enjoyed the way the color played out whenever I knit that up with the two colors working together. But it's super wash wool, and this hat like totally stretched out after I wore it for a little while. So I ran it through the dryer, and it had a pom-pom on it, and the pom-pom just like totally disintegrated in the dryer, and all of my other clothes just had like pom-pom bits on them for weeks. I kept finding little random threads of yarn, which was a bummer, and I need to remake the pom-pom now, because I love the pom-pom that hat. It was like the cutest little topper. So I'll have to remake that. I still have enough leftover yarn to do another pom-pom, and do that before winter comes and it starts to get real chilly. So next work in progress is my Cullum shirt. It is a summer tee that I'm knitting out of Knit Picks Cotton, which is a cotton linen blend, and the colorway is Blackberry. And I have made some decent progress on this. I had wanted to be done with it to wear it when I went to Portland, which clearly didn't happen. I had to knit that dinosaur. Like, I had to finish the dinosaur before I went, because I was going to see my friend and her son. So that took precedence over getting the shirt done for the trip. And it was just, this started to feel like it was going so slow, because I was just in this stockinette round and round. Like, there's no shaping or anything. There's a little faux seam on the sides, but other than that, it's just like knitting around. And I just wasn't motivated, I guess. I don't know. I kept trying to work on it, and I would just get 1 or 2 rows done. And then I figured out, like, this is TV knitting. I need to force myself to sit down and watch some television, and then I'll make some progress on the shirt. And indeed, that is what I did. I forced myself to sit down for a couple of nights and watch some knitting podcasts. I finally finished The Americans, which was super fun. I really enjoyed that show. But yeah, I watched the last episode of that the other night working on this, and yeah, I just kind of tore through the rest of the body. You're supposed to knit to 13 inches below the underarm, and then do another little lace bit, and then bind off. And then I'll have to come back through and pick up a little bit around the neck. You knit just like 2 or 3 rows and bind off, which just is going to give it some more stability and help prevent, the dreaded stockinette curl. That should stop once I do that. And then it's done. I don't have to do anything else on the sleeves. Sleeves are done. They're just these little sort of cap sleeve things, or dolman sleeves. I don't know. I'm not up on my fashion vocabulary. But yeah, you knit to 13 inches under the underarm. I'm at 12.5 inches right now, so it's just almost there. Just a few more rows, and then I can do the lace. So this should get finished really pretty quickly. I would guess in the next week. So that's really exciting. I'll be able to block it and wear it. Well, it's still pretty warm out. It actually has started feeling like fall lately. It's super exciting. It's getting me all excited. And I'm also starting to work on these fall projects, and it's getting me really excited for the cooler weather. It's still pretty warm today. I think the high today is going to be 80. But we're not having any more of those 85, 90 degree days. Like, those seem like they're done. The forecast is pretty much like 77 to 80 degrees with some afternoon rain showers. It's pretty nice. And I said last time, I work up on the mountain, up in the ski valley. And yeah, we've definitely had some fall days up there. I went to work the other day, and it just rained up on the mountain all day. It felt like the Pacific Northwest. Whenever you were driving up, the clouds were just like hanging in the trees. And then it would drizzle for a little bit, and then rain a little harder and kind of clear up. But it was just gray all day. I don't think it ever got above like 60 degrees. It really felt like fall. And the very first of the aspens are starting to turn a little bit yellow. So yeah, you can feel it creeping in. So that's a fun feeling. So I need to finish that Cullum shirt before it gets cold, is basically my point. So my next work in progress is going to be a great fall knit. It's my Cruden vest. It's a Fair Isle vest from Ysolda Teague, and I am knitting it all in yarns that I dyed myself using natural dyes. And here is the swatch for it again, which I goofed on all the colors, but up at the very top I got it right. So you get the gist of kind of what the pattern is going to be and what the color palette is. And last time I was only part way through the bottom ribbing. I hadn't made it very far. And this time I am happy to say I'm all the way through the bottom ribbing. Yay! So the next row, I add in color. So that's a really exciting spot to be on this. Yeah, so I've obviously been working on a lot of other things and had more high priority things like a dinosaur to finish. But I got through the bottom ribbing, so now I can start on the color. And I really want to start working on the color, but I really need to finish my shirt first because seasons, right? I need to knit in season. So yeah, I'm really glad I'm almost done with my Cullum shirt so that I can start working more on my Cruden vest. I keep getting the names of those mixed up. They're way too similar. So I wanted to share a little knitting tip that kind of changed my knitting life. I'd like to, include something in every episode. I think that's a good thing to do. So I don't remember where I picked this up, but it's one of those kind of obvious things that once somebody tells it to you, you're like, why did I never think to do this? Like, of course, and it makes your life so much easier. So when you join in the round, it's really important that you don't twist your stitches. And it's really easy to twist your stitches, especially on something like a garment where you have 200 plus stitches on the needles and it's all on, out on the cable, and those stitches just love to flip around that cable. And it doesn't happen to me every time, but it's happened to me enough times that, after you cast on and you join and you knit a couple of rounds, then you realize, no, this is twisted. And then you have to tear it all out and start over because there's no way to fix it. So what I do now is I don't join in the round. And that's my big tip and trick for you today. Don't join in the round. Knit it flat for the first ½ inch or inch or so. And that way, you have fabric on your needle whenever you go to join in the round. It's way easier, one, just to see which direction the stitches are in, and two, you actually have fabric with some stability and some weight to it, so it's not going to flip around the needle like it does whenever you're just on your cast on round. And then once you have that little bit knitted flat, then join in the round, and you're on your way, and you're not going to twist your stitches. Like, there's just no way you're going to do it if you have that much fabric on the needles. And then, you have to go back and weave in your cast on in anyhow, and you just have that little tiny bit to seam up. It's not a big deal. You're already weaving in your end anyhow. It's a win-win situation. So that's always what I do now, because why wouldn't I, right? So yeah, that's my tip for the day. So we'll keep moving on with works in progress because I have a gazillion of them. Well, I guess technically this one isn't a work in progress anymore. If you follow me on Instagram, you know this already. Last time I showed you a pair of just plain vanilla socks that I was working on, which I always have as a backup knitting project that I can just throw in my purse. It's small, it's easy, it's simple, it's mindless. You find yourself stuck at the DMV, you can knit. You find yourself waiting for a friend at a bar or whatever, pull out a sock, you can knit for a little bit. So I always have some basic vanilla stockinette socks going. And I also have a dog that I talked about in the last episode who loves wool, and I think that you might see where this is going. So the dog has been getting better. I'm really happy to say the dog has been getting better. I couldn't even knit with him in the house last time. Like, if I got my knitting out, he was biting it and trying to get away from me. We've progressed beyond that now. I can now knit on the couch and he'll chew on his bone. It's amazing. So we're getting there. But I cannot leave my knitting unattended still. So I had knit a few rows on the sock. I set it down on the shelf I did not set it down on a high enough shelf, and the dog got it. And by the time I found him, he had eaten through the toe. And I took a picture of him and I publicly shamed him on social media, like you do. And, you know, I mean, I was annoyed, of course, but like, it's not that big of a deal. It's my backup project of socks that I always have going. And, you know, he had just ripped into the toe, so I figured I'd just finish knitting the sock and then pick the stitches up again and knit down the toe. Easy enough, right? And then about an hour later, he found the sock again. I had set it down in the middle of the kitchen island, which also apparently is not high up enough. So he jumped up on the kitchen island and grabbed it. And this time he pulled the needles all the way out, and he ate the back. He ate the top end too. So it's ripped up at the toe and at the top. So this sock is officially dead. Definitely officially dead. So that's a bummer. I mean, it's just at the ends, like the whole center part, all that yarn is salvageable. I just have to unravel it. And I also still have enough yarn on the skein that I can knit a whole pair of socks out of this. It's like not a big deal. Hi, Tubby. I'm long-term cat sitting a friend's cat. She's traveling and moving and doing lots of things. She was my old roommate whenever I had moved out of the house. Come here, Tubby. So Tubby's going to make an appearance. And this is her cat, Tubby. Everybody loves Tubby. Tub, tub. Tub, tub. Yes. Okay. Oh, he's wet. Why is your tail wet? What happened there? Okay, well, that's a thing. So I have one more work in progress. And this is a new one. Since I finished the sample knit for the shop, the Gemini top that I showed you earlier, they gave me a few options for another pattern and yarn to do a sample. And I don't know why I did this, but for some reason I picked... Tubby, what are you doing? For some reason, I really want to know why his tail's wet. That's concerning to me. Like, what did you get into? What have you been doing? Okay, so they gave me 3 patterns and 3 yarns for me to pick from to do a sample. And one was like, you know, fingery white sock yarn, lacy shawl, lovely, whatever. The other one was a worsted weight shawl with a little bit of lace, a lot of stockinette, and, you know, some eyelets kind of a thing. Tabby, get out of here. Go on. Oh. He's trying to get into my yarn. And then the third one was a scarf, a very intricate lacy scarf made out of the yarn that I hate the most in the shop. Every time I walk past it, I look at it and I think, why? And what would anyone do with this yarn? I haven't been able to fathom what anyone would do with it. And okay, this is the yarn. It is linen, cotton, and glitz. Whatever that means. Let me take the label off here so you can see it a little better. I mean, look at that. It's just like, I could not figure out what anyone would do with this. And then that's the pattern that I picked to make the sample of. I don't know why. Like, I would never, maybe this is why, because I would never make anything for myself out of this. I'm just not into that. I have a very traditional style. I like neutrals and earth tones. Like, I don't like bling. I've never been a bedazzler. But I mean, yeah, look at that in the light. It's just like, it's so super shiny. The scarf pattern just looked really beautiful and elegant. And I was like, oh my God, that is what somebody does with this yarn. So I guess I was just so intrigued by this strange yarn and this pattern that I was... Tubby, you have got to get... All right. I'm going to put the cat outside, and I'll be right back. Okay, the cat's outside now. So hopefully I can concentrate. Yeah, so I guess that's why I ended up picking this to do the sample of, because it just is so out of my realm that I was intrigued. And of course, I immediately regretted that decision. I cast on and started doing the pattern, and it's lace all over. It's random bouts of reverse stockinette. There's cables in here. There's these crazy decreases that like make almost these bobbly things. And it's just, you have to pay attention. It's not a quick and easy mindless knit. And I also don't think I realized that this is thread weight yarn whenever I pick this. And it's a pretty stiff yarn too, because it's got all of this metallic stuff going through it. So it's like, it's not fun to knit with. It's really kind of a mentally consuming pattern. And I hate the yarn. And I knew all of this going in, but I picked it anyway. So yeah. It's a whole scarf too. So I've got another 5 feet. 5 feet to go. Yeah. I mean, you know, you look at it in the sunshine and it's all sparkly. I'm sure, I mean, I can tell whenever I, you know, stretch it out, like it's going to be aggressively blocked. It's going to be a nice, pretty, elegant wrap to like wear with an evening dress or something. Like I get it. But oh God, now I have to knit it. And yeah, I'll be working on that a lot this month. I'm working in the shop quite a bit through the month of September. So I should get a lot of work done on that one and have some progress to show you. So, oh my God, that's all of my works in progress. Okay. So what have I got now? I've got my in the queue. So yeah, in the queue is one I showed you last week, which is, it's like almost a work in progress. I haven't cast on yet, but I've done the swatch. So I'm still going to call it in the queue. Was for Ommegang, which is a oversized asymmetrical cabled tunic from Thea Coleman. And I am knitting it up in Knit Picks. Oh dear, I forgot the name. I forgot the name of it. Simply Wool Worsted, I think is what it's called. So here is my swatch so far. You can see the cable down there on the bottom, and then I have a little stockinette bit up at the top. And the pattern calls for a DK, but this is a worsted. And I figured it would be fine, and you know what? It's totally fine. I got gauge almost spot on. My stockinette gauge is 5.3 stitches per inch, and the pattern calls for 5 stitches per inch. So I'm a little bit under on gauge for that, but I'm a little bit over on gauge for my cable section, which is pretty funny. So it kind of balances each other out. Because on this sweater, it's going to be like one side is cabled and the other side is stockinette. So yeah, whenever I went through to figure out my math on all of the grading and everything, it still all pretty much worked out. Yeah, because I was a little under on this and a little over on this, and there you go. So yeah, I usually have to do a little bit of adjustment whenever I'm going off of a pattern for a garment. And, you know, this one is supposed to have quite a bit of positive ease, so there's a lot of forgiveness there. But I'm pretty hourglass shaped, and my arms are kind of oddly shaped as well. I have very, very skinny wrists and kind of thick upper arms. So like, it's a little above average here and a little below average here, so there's just a big discrepancy. I almost always have to rework the sleeves. And you know, this is no exception. So I redid the math for the sleeve increases. I'm going to have to do some extra, but I'm still going off of all standard sizes. So I'm casting on the sleeve in a smaller size and increasing up to like the next size up. So just adding extra increases to get me to the next size up on the sleeves. And same thing with the body. I'm starting with the larger size for the hips, and then I'm doing extra decreases down to the waist to go a size smaller, and then going back up to the larger size for the bust and adding some extra increases there, which is what I end up doing for almost all of the garments that I knit that have shaping. But yeah, it's got a lot of positive ease in it, so I think, you know, it's not going to be too big of a deal. So I figured out all of my math on that. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Trying to do all of the calculations with one gauge over and one gauge under was a little mentally challenging, just to keep it all straight in my head, but it should be pretty straightforward. And so that means I'm ready to cast on. I'm ready to cast on this sweater. And I'm super happy that the worsted worked out, and I like the way that the fabric looks. It's a nice tight knit, but it still has a good drape and it still feels really light. So I think it was a good choice. But I have, again, so many other projects going on. Yeah, I hope I cast this on soon. I really do. But I also still have my Wolf River sweater that I showed you guys last time. I'm not going to go into that again today. That I put in hibernation last winter that needs sleeves and some collar ribbing. So it's like I should really finish that first because it's not that much work, and then I have a whole sweater that's done and then cast this on, but we'll see how it goes. I might cast it on anyhow. Yeah, I did have one other sweater idea because I have to have a million sweaters going all at the same time. I didn't used to be like that. I used to be a very mono knitter, and I would do one project and finish it and start another project and finish it. And somewhere along the way, you know, it's a slippery slope. You add in an extra thing here and it doesn't quite get done. You add in another and then suddenly you just have a million things going. But I had a couple of sweater patterns picked out before I went up to Portland because I wanted to buy some yarn when I was there, because they have fantastic yarn shops there and there's a gazillion of them. And I wanted to get something I couldn't get here. And the pattern I was looking at was to use a speckled yarn because I don't like speckled yarn and I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone and do something adventurous, I guess. I want to find some way that I like the speckled yarn. Just like with that metallic yarn, like I can understand it with that scarf. It's like, okay, that makes sense. So like with the sweater, I could understand the speckled yarn. So basically it's like a raglan pullover with the body and like a smock stitch, like a smocking stitch, and then the sleeves and stockinette. And the smocking stitch, you know, pulls yarn from different rows up and everything and kind of like mixes the colors more. So you don't end up like weird pooling, which I really hate pooling. And it makes the speckled yarn read better, in my opinion. So that was kind of my idea, was like I was going to find a really cool speckled yarn in Portland and buy a sweater quantity, and like this would be kind of my next in the wing sweater after I finish all of my other sweaters and the other sweaters I have in the queue. And I found some yarn that I like kind of fell in love with, but it's speckled, which is the whole point, I know. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it because it's like, I know by the time I actually get to casting the sweater on, it's going to be probably like February or something. You know, it's going to be like a late winter, spring kind of a knit. And I was just afraid that by the time that rolled around that I wouldn't like the color anymore because I'm so kind of tenuous on speckled yarn anyway. So I didn't end up buying anything. I did find also some Malabrigo that I was kind of in love with, but they didn't have a sweater quantity, and I can get Malabrigo at my shop here, so that seemed kind of pointless. So I didn't end up buying any yarn on my trip, which is totally fine. So I've really been wanting to work with the Juniper Moonshine yarn, which is a single ply worsted yarn that we carry at the shop that I've been working at. And every time I walk past that section, unlike this metallic yarn where every time I walk by I say, why? Every time I walk by the Moonshine, I say, oh my God, I want a sweater out of you. So that's kind of my next sort of in the queue idea. And I already picked out the color that I want, that we have enough sweater quantity. Like, we probably have enough for like 2.5 sweaters. So even if some sells before I get around to buying it, there should still be enough. It's a nice dark green. I don't know what the colorway name is, but I think it'll be a really good color. Green works well with me and matches my eyes and works with the skin tone, so can't go wrong with a good green. So that's kind of my plan, is to get a sweater quantity of that and then do the easy Elizabeth Zimmerman percentage system to knit my own sweater. And I really just want to do a basic stockinette crew neck, like not super high crew neck, a little bit wider, with like a raglan saddle shoulder combo. I haven't quite figured that part out. But just like a closet staple kind of a sweater that I can wear all the time for any occasion. Because I do find that, you know, whenever you knit something for yourself, you usually want to do something that's like fun and interesting with like Fair Isle all over it, or cables all over it, or lace all over it. And you end up with all of these sweaters and garments that are like kind of a little over the top sometimes. And then you just want to wear something like simple and basic one day, and it's like, I don't want, you know, a big chevron yoke with like 5 different colors today. Like, I just want to be I don't want anybody to notice me. I just want to be nondescript today. So I want to have, you know, a hand knit basic. So that's kind of my other in the queue plan. And I've picked the yarn, I've picked the color, but I haven't bought it. And, you know, we'll see when I get to that. If I get to that. So that's everything for the knitting. So I have been doing some dyeing lately. I bought a bunch of yarn, which I talked about last time, and it has since arrived. So I've been kind of systematically going through that and mordanting it in batches. And I really only use an alum mordant. I have worked with chrome and tin like once or twice. I was working with a master natural dyer up here in New Mexico for like a year or so, and you know, she's still sort of my mentor, and I can email her questions, and she's she's always checking in with me on how my Cruden vest is going, because she helped me get all of those colors and figure out how to get the shades that I wanted and everything. And I always have to keep very sadly replying to her that I'm still just on the bottom ripping. So I'll be really happy to, you know, get that going, and I can send her some pictures of progress. But yeah, I've used a little bit of chrome and tin modifiers with her. We still used alum mordants as like the base whenever we were working with some historical dye recipes, trying to get like historically accurate scarlet red, like, you know, the British redcoat red. You use tin and cochineal, I think. It's been a while. Again, we used chrome to get a purple, which I recall did not work. It was a historical purple recipe. And we can only ever get gray. So, but yeah, I mean, generally I only use alum. I have some iron. I've never mordanted with iron. I've only done iron afterbaths, which I do really like, because I like muting the colors down and using that to do some like tonality. But yeah, alum is a safe bet. So I've just been going through and mordanting a bunch of stuff with alum. I still have a lot more to go. And as I went, I've been playing with some colors on the side, just with some little sample skeins I have. So this is, I don't have a ton to show. They're all kind of from the same batch. I have some more plans to do some cochineal experiments, but so far I've really only been experimenting with Saxon Blue, which is made from indigo, but it's mixed. I really should have read up on this before I started talking about it, because I didn't mix up the Saxon Blue. My dye mentor mixed up the Saxon Blue, and she gave me a little jar to take home. But it's indigo powder that's mixed with sulfuric acid, basically, and I'm sure some other things. Sorry for the lack of knowledge right now. So it's a dangerous dye to mix. It's a dangerous dye to work with. I have to use plastic or glass, like plastic measuring scoops to get it out of the glass jar that, you know, has plastic over the top, and you have to use gloves and all that stuff because it's sulfuric acid. But it makes a really nice turquoise. So this is one of my Saxon Blue experiments, trying to get some tonality in there, and I'm really happy with how that kind of turned out. And I've also been playing with bindweed, which I have a ton of in my yard. It's an invasive weed. It's a morning glory relative. So the flowers look like morning glory. I mean, it looks like a morning glory, but the flowers are like whitish, pinkish. And it's very viney, and it's smaller. But anyway, point being, it makes a dye. So that's a win-win for me. I can just go out to my yard and rip out a bunch of weeds and throw them in the dye pot and get some color. So yeah, this is like a traditional color in these parts. It's used a lot, at least my dye mentor, she would use it to get skin tones for like embroidery and weaving yarns. Like that's what people were really into this color for, because you can get some neutrals out of it basically. So like it's not that exciting of a color, but I've been playing around with it as an under dye. So I over dyed my bindweed with Saxon, and you get this much deeper sort of shade of blue. So I had both of these in the same dye pot. So you can see the one there on the right is just the Saxon. That was bare yarn that went in, and the one on the left was first dyed with the bindweed and then put into the Saxon pot. So it really changed the color there. And I didn't stir up the Saxon quite enough, and I got a big splotch on this one, which is kind of beautiful. Like, I mean, you can see if you used a lot of Saxon, which I did not put very much in the dye pot at all. It really strikes pretty quickly. It's a really saturated dye. So if you used a lot of it, like you could get some really deep colors. I mean, the darkest part of this is just almost black. It's really pretty. And then I did another one with the bindweed in the Saxon with like a pretty heavy resist, just to see what would happen. And I really like the effect. I don't really like the color combo, you know, but that's what it was all about, just playing around. So those are kind of my little dye experiments that I have for this week. I've got some more in line. Next time I'm mordanting, I'm going to have a pot going on the side with some cochineal and play around with over dyeing the bindweed with cochineal. Yeah, I have a bunch of chamisa in my yard as well, also called rabbit brush, which is just about to flower. It's like all these little yellow buds out there, and like it's just going to pop any day. And I did some experiments with that last summer with the rabbit brush, which makes a really nice yellow, and I over dyed that with cochineal with a resist and made this really cool sort of like raspberry and yellow kind of swirl going on. So I want to play with that some more too. So hopefully next time I'll have some cochineal and some rabbit brush samples to show you. And maybe I'll have gotten through my mordanting and like actually dye a whole skein of yarn. We'll see. So yeah, I think that's everything, and I'm getting super hot because I keep recording these things in the middle of the day on pretty warm days. Yeah, hopefully next time it'll be legitimately fall and I won't be so hot sitting here. Although, as the season goes, the sun comes in further and further as the sun goes down in the sky. That's sort of the point of the greenhouse windows, is that they're passive solar. So as it gets closer to the winter solstice, the sun comes really far into the house. And it stays really warm in here in the winter. So I'll probably still be burning up. Even if it's snowing outside and I'm recording sitting under these windows, I'll probably still turn bright red. It's just the way it goes. Maybe I should record someplace else. I should think about that. So that's everything. That's gardens, that's yarns, that's dyes. Yeah, that's life. So thank you for joining me again. I hope you're all happy and well, and I'll see you next time.